Welcome, everyone, to Fantasy Basketball Trends. My name is Braxton, and this is the show where I give my thoughts on some guys that I like and some guys that I don't like over the last week. So the guys that I mentioned can be streamers, trade targets, or just guys to pick up and hold, while the guys that I'm not liking can range anywhere from outright drops to someone you need to keep a close eye on. Really excited about this list this week. Had a couple guys that I was really feeling, and I'm really excited to talk a little bit about with you guys moving into the next week. So, the first one is going to be DÖMIN, who there's so much opportunity on this Nets team, both now and moving forward into the season for some really nice fantasy value, considering where they draft. I believe it's actually DÖMIN in the draft, 8th overall. They are incredibly high on him, and he's really picked it up over the last 2 weeks, taking advantage of this Cam Thomas injury and also some of that rotation shifting that's been going on in Brooklyn. Over the last 2 weeks, his 9-category ranking is not excellent at 149, but he's knocking down 2 threes per game, 11 points, 4.7 rebounds, 4.2 assists, 0.8 steals, and half a block per game. The percentages are really what's knocking him down. It's the 39 field goal percentage and 66 from the line, although he is only taking about half a free throw per game over the last 2 weeks. And I want to be clear, he's taken 3 total free throws, missed 1. Okay, so just factor that in when you're looking at his stats over the last 2 weeks. It's nothing. Obviously, you can eat that. And the field goal percentage is something you're just going to have to put up with for counting stats. But there's so much late season potential here for DÖMIN on this Nets team. Who's to say, how, or I guess when Cam Thomas is able to return, but also how he's going to perform when he does return, or how much is he going to be prioritized, right? Kind of in this contract year that Cam Thomas is in. They clearly did not want to pay him. So it's possible to think that if they don't think he's going to re-sign, maybe he loses some prioritization in this rotation. I don't know how likely that is. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it is possible. DÖMIN is starting to stand out now as a big piece for the Nets. And if you need counting stats, he is your guy, right? I expect him really to keep up what he's doing. He's been starting the last few games. I don't expect that to change with the level of his play. And they've actually pulled off a couple wins since he entered the starting lineup, which is so huge for him. And I'm sure Jordi Fernandez is a big fan of that. He's talked about earlier in the season trying to get his guys really to effort. And, one surprising thing to me, I guess, is compared to earlier in the season, his shot volume was a little low, but you got to love how many shots he's taking now with 18 shots his last game, which would be his high on the season. Really want that kind of usage from him. And I'm not too concerned about the field goal percentage. That's something you need to think of while you're rostering him. The season-long stats haven't been the best. He's like I said, he did start slow at 8.5 boards, 8.5 points, 3.7 boards, 3.5 assists. But the free throw is actually 83% on the season, right? It's that low volume that kind of tricks you sometimes. So don't think it's good one way or the other. But, I expect the minutes to continue trending up, and I'm really liking DÖMIN as a pickup in redraft leagues. And also, he's trending up in Dynasty leagues. It might be hard to trade for him now, but if you own him, I'd be pretty excited about it. So, next, I want to talk about another Nets player. It's going to be Tyrese Martin, and he's been starting a few games for the Nets and seems to be one of the bigger veteran presences on this team, along with Terrence Mann and Nick Claxton. He's actually ranking over DÖMIN over the last 2 weeks at 133. And the percentages have been pretty nice. 50% from the field, 78% from the line. And then over the last 2 weeks, his stats have been comparable to Jaegor's. At 2 threes, 13 points, 3.6 boards, 3 assists, a steal, and only 1 turnover per game. So that's pretty nice. He's not really hurting you anywhere. On many platforms, I haven't checked all of them, but he has point guard, shooting guard, small forward eligibility, at least on Yahoo, which is huge. That small forward is, with that being the main one. I expect him to continue to play a large role for this Nets team as they continue to look to stay competitive. They're not going to win a lot of games, but they, really want to try to avoid that losing culture, and Jordi Fernandez has talked about that a bunch, right? Ben Sarf started the season in the starting lineup, but has been relegated to the G League a couple times already. So Tyrese Martin is probably safe in his role. Nolan Traore also has not been much of a factor either and is still in the G League. He's just not ready. Some people thought he'd play a large role on this Nets team. Doesn't seem to be the case. They're prioritizing the vets a little bit more than I think some people anticipated. And I don't think at any point they're just going to bench, Terrence Mann, Tyrese Martin, Nick Claxton, these guys who are veterans, although they're still in their mid to late 20s, right? They don't really have anybody super old on this team. So until those two demonstrate they're ready, Martin's going to play a pretty legitimate role. And like I said, he's producing kind of similar stats to DÖMIN at a fraction of the cost. DÖMIN is only rostered in 7% of Yahoo leagues, which is too low. But then even lower is Tyrese Martin, only rostered in 3%. He's been kind of on a tear over the last few weeks. I will admit that Martin has less upside than DÖMIN does, so that's something to think of as well. Between the two, I definitely prefer Jaeger, but he's definitely in, or Martin. Excuse me. Martin is definitely in that elite streamer category with some upside. Can be rostered if he continues to start. I know Jaeger just missed the last game, but if Martin sticks in the starting lineup, definitely worth rostering. Probably free in most Dynasty leagues. Might be even on the waiver wire in quite a few. Nice low-end contributor for contenders. And potentially someone you can flip as a rebuilder. He doesn't have that name value. Maybe somebody else does, though. So next, let's talk about Jay Huff, who is quietly turning back into the player, or I guess not turning back, but turning into the player that a lot of people had hoped he would be coming into the season. He currently leads the NBA in both total blocks and blocks per game. Obviously, largely attributed to Wembanyama being injured, but still extremely noteworthy. Jay Huff is also knocking down some triples, and that combination should be more than enough to make him a priority pickup for you. Even in his limited minutes earlier in the season, we saw him put up some really nice block games. Rick Carlisle was kind of messing with the rotation a bit, having that three-man center rotation with Jackson, Tony Bradley, and Jay Huff, but seems to kind of fully settled on a two-man rotation at this point with Huff and Jackson, phasing Tony Bradley out, and it's been nothing but positive for Jay Huff. Over the last 2 weeks, he's making 2 3-pointers per game and blocking 3 shots per game. That alone should be enough for you to run the waiver wire, but he's throwing at 11 points per game and 4.7 boards. Field goal percentage is at 49, so pretty nice for the amount of threes that he's bringing you. Not really any assists or steals, right? But that's not why you're grabbing him. Over in 9-cat, over the last 2 weeks, he ranks ahead of Chet Holmgren, and you could argue he's been a better fantasy asset than Chet over the last 2 weeks, and I think he literally has, right? I mean, 9 category ranking is higher, and he's shooting more threes, and he's blocking more shots than Chet, which is why you roster Chet in the first place, okay? Jay Huff is definitely a must-grab right now, only rostered in 18% of Yahoo leagues, which is way too low for what he's been doing. Not going to find this level of blocks or threes on the waiver wire from the center position. And as long as Rick Carlisle continues the two-man center rotation with, excluding Tony Bradley, right? Huff should continue to thrive. He can get hot quick. Just a couple games, or just recently, scored 14 points in the first quarter. Really a solid. He's kind of the 9 category guys, 9 category dream. Not gonna put up a ton of rebounds. Not gonna have any assists, right? But 9 category. He's a dream. Threes, blocks, no turnovers. It's awesome. Curious to see how far ahead of Wembanyama he pulls in the blocks race, and to see how long he can hold it. He looks better than Isaiah Jackson. I still don't think Isaiah Jackson is very good, and obviously has completely outplayed Tony Bradley. Must roster in any format or league size, even in 8-team leagues. You won't find this blocks threes combo very easily. So I would grab him. In Dynasty, if he was dropped because of his slow start, although he's probably been picked up now, run to the wire and grab him. Also, I know there's some concern about the Pacers resting guys, but to me, does not seem like someone the Pacers would rest late in the season. Unlike Benedict Mathurin, Nembhard, and Siakam, those guys are kind of core to this Pacers team. I think Jay Huff is going to have a pretty stable role and may actually see a boost on nights where guys like that sit, just because of his, his role this far. Okay, next, let's talk about Jalen Williams, the center. This is purely because of Isaiah Hartenstein going down for 2 weeks. Yes, Jalen Williams, the wing, has just returned, which caps him a bit. But let's remember, Jalen Williams, the center, is capable of putting up a triple-double in the right situation with some extended minutes. He did it multiple times last year. Played 21 minutes last game without Hartenstein, which is fine. I mean, I would like to see a little bit closer to 24. He did play 24 minutes in a blowout versus Utah, putting up 15 points, 6 boards, 6 assists. Those assist numbers from the center position are something he does really well. Hartenstein is set to be reevaluated in 2 weeks, so 10 to 14 days. So he's definitely someone to keep an eye on in redraft, Jalen Williams, that is. They're going to be very cautious with J-Dub, the wing. So the center, Jalen Williams, should benefit from, one, the Hartenstein injury, two, OKC resting players, and then also OKC just, being so good that, that he has that upside in blowouts to enter the game as well. I know Brandon Carlson is doing that as well, but Jalen Williams can play next to Brandon Carlson on some nights. Always been a guy who spikes when OKC rests people this year and in the past. Definitely in that high-end streamer category right now, which, if you guys don't know by now, that is definitely probably my favorite category of guy to talk about. But probably not grabbing hold just yet. But on nights with, like I said, rest or blowout potential, definitely a strong streamer option. Can be rosterable in 14-team leagues, I will say. Only rostered in 2% of Yahoo leagues, so should be available almost everywhere. In Dynasty, his value probably stays about the same long term, but I've always really liked him as an upside guy because, one, OKC is good, and then they rest players often, right? And then he can also rack up stats very quickly. Blocks, assists, occasional steal, some threes, right? He's got a really nice, unique skill set from the center position, and somebody I'm really keeping my eye on moving forward. And then rounding out the guys that I have trending up is going to be Pele Larson. He is cooling off a little bit with Miami getting healthy, but he's been pretty solid this season. Not the greatest 9-category rank, but Larson is showing some counting stat ability that I don't think a lot of people expected. Maybe this is just me, but the counting stats, the rebounds and assists on top of the shooting have been really interesting to me. Yeah, he struggled from the field the last couple games, going 2 for 13, 4 for 10, 3 for 10, but the shots are there even with Tyler Hero back, which is something that is really exciting to me. Norm Powell is back, right? Andrew Wiggins, I know Jaime Jaquez just missed the last game. There is some concern to be had, and this is why he's last on this list this week. But it's possible Simone Fontecchio is the biggest loser from Harrow's return. Just didn't play at all last game. Larson is still in the rotation, playing 24-plus minutes. Double-digit points with some rebounds and assists is definitely in play on most nights, I would think. Really nice low-end guy and upside play in Dynasty leagues. Only rostered in 4% of Yahoo leagues, but he is trending down since some of those guys are returning. But he's been too good to fully remove from the rotation, in my opinion, right? So a good deeper league upside flyer in addition to being a nice Dynasty flyer. At worst, he kind of becomes a 3-point streamer. At best, he's a multi-category contributor with some real upside, right? So Dynasty managers seem really excited about what he's shown this far. Depending on how Miami's rotation shakes out, someone I would consider acquiring in Dynasty. And now could be a good time with some of these guys coming back. Because if he shows that he's able to kind of keep this up when these players return, his price might go up a little bit. This is something I think is really interesting about Larson. I mentioned the counting stats, right? I think the assists have been really under-recognized for him. He's averaging almost 5 assists per game over the last 2 weeks. And if you think of it from that perspective, he's more of an assist guy than just a shooter, right? Which is kind of what I think a lot of people thought he was. He becomes a lot more appealing as an assists play, right? So grabbing those assists out of the forward slot is so huge. So if you're thinking of someone like Davion Mitchell or Jamal Shead, who maybe I talked a little bit about last week as assist streamer, Davion Mitchell is probably a little bit higher than a streamer at this point. But I think Larson should be right in that conversation with more upside because he's got that scoring upside, right? And ability to knock down threes the way that those couple guys can. So if he continues to play minutes in the mid-20s with the ball in his hands, and it's so interesting because watching the games, he's just a good passer, right? He's not putting the ball on the floor a ton, but if he's making that extra pass, which is allowing him to grab those assists in these decent numbers. If depending on how he performs when the team is fully healthy, if they ever get there, we might be seeing a little bit of a shift in his fantasy archetype with this improvement in assists, right? So definitely somebody I would consider grabbing in dynasty leagues and redraft leagues, like I mentioned. So okay, trending down. The top guy is gonna be Jaden Ivey. I know he's been super limited coming back from injury, but my concern is, where does this fantasy value actually come from? We've talked about this with other guys in the past. Even last year with his really nice season at 17-4-4, almost one season, he was ranked 125, which on the surface, those numbers seem like they'd be better than that. But, he had high turnovers. The percentages weren't awesome at 43 and 73. And I just don't think he's going to get that level of usage this year. He only played 30 games last year before breaking his leg. So it was a little bit of a smaller sample size for those stats on what was actually a good Detroit team. This Detroit team is good now, right? The emergence of Dennis Jenkins, who I don't think is a super breakout guy, but I think he's going to stick in the rotation. Plus touches going to Tobias Harris, Duncan Robinson, and Jalen Duren just being unbelievable, about doubling his points per game this year. It's been insane. I'm nervous about the opportunity that Jaden Ivey is going to have. Karis LeVert is another one that is directly affecting Jaden Ivey. If Detroit wants to keep Dennis Jenkins in the rotation, that directly affects Jaden Ivey. Detroit also didn't extend Ivey before the deadline in October, meaning he's going to be a restricted free agent this summer. It's possible he doesn't return and he's not prioritized, depending on how they value Duren and others financially. And with this Detroit team being good, they're not going to put Ivey out there just to put him out there, right? They're trying to win games. They've got all these veterans, and they're going to do whatever it takes to win those games, right? I'm concerned the counting stats won't match last year's at 17-4-4. If the assists and rebounds aren't there and the points take a hit, that is major cause for concern. For him to return real fantasy value, he's going to need 26 to 28 minutes. I'm not sure he gets that. Jenkins has been awesome, and while his minutes obviously have dipped recently with the return of Ivey, he's clearly an NBA caliber rotation player. Ivey probably does some scoring, but overall he's looking like, kind of empty calories, I think. 31% rostered in Yahoo Leagues feels a little too high to me, given I don't think the upside is there in redraft leagues. In dynasty leagues, probably a hold. Not going to be able to get much value on him right now. I think the best outcome for Ivey is a change of scenery to actually a bad team for Ivey to be able to get the usage he needs to turn into the fantasy asset that we all wanted him to be. All right, next is going to be Anthony Simons, still somehow owned in 80% of Yahoo leagues. Simons is a drop at this point. He's been well outside the top 200 on the season, and he's only scoring, and even that disappears on some nights. They've messed with his minutes recently, and when he's not scoring, he provides nothing. There's no steals, no blocks, low rebounds, low assists, bad field goal percentage. On the season, he's shooting 13, 2-2 with bad field goal percentage. Comparing him to Malik Monk, he's got similar points, boards, and assists. Monk is shooting a little bit better, but Monk also averages 0.8 steals and 0.5 blocks. I'm not saying to swap them, but Monk is owned in 31% of leagues, and Simons is owned in 80% of leagues. So where's that discrepancy coming from? But the difference being Monk has some real upside if the Kings make some trades, while I don't think Simons has that level of upside. Joe Mazzulla has shown zero intention to prioritize Simons, in any capacity. Boston is competitive in these games that they're playing, so they're not going to give him extra minute usage or minutes. They're trying to win, right? So if the Celtics slide later in the season, Hugo Gonzalez could be prioritized over Simons, with Simons on an expiring contract. So to sum it up, just a drop in redraft Simons for me. Dynasty, you probably need a few good games before selling. Maybe Jaylen Brown goes down with an injury or something like that. Derek White. Maybe Simons pops off for a couple big scoring games. But the long-term ceiling is a little bit concerning to me for Simons. And then rounding us out is going to be D'Angelo Russell. I can't believe this still needs to be said. I mentioned him in week one as someone I was not feeling, and then he had a couple big games after that. But, D'Angelo Russell is fully a drop. He's completely lost his rotation spot to Brandon Williams and Ryan Nembhard. It's actually been worse than I anticipated. And it's only going to get worse from here. he was healthy in a DNP CD behind Ryan Nembhard last game. When he does play, yeah, he's putting up some scoring, some assists, but he needs the ball in his hands to do that, and Dallas does not want to let him do that. At absolute best, he's a streamer on nights when Dallas is super slammed with injuries, but I would fully rather have Brandon Williams. He's not someone you need to hang on to and rate off by any means. Dynasty, I'm also majorly concerned. If he can't beat out Brandon Williams or Ryan Nembhard, it's a terrible sign for his long-term role. He's on a 2-year contract. Brandon Williams is good, right? But D'Angelo Russell should easily be the starting point guard until Kyrie returns, and he's just been bad. He's been struggling with some basketball IQ plays, and he's just not helping them win. And when Kyrie does return, if D'Lo cannot beat out Brandon Williams and Nembhard now, it's extremely, extremely unlikely that Russell is going to see any rotation minutes when Kyrie enters the fold. He can't play off ball. It's just he doesn't have that in him. And Cooper Flag is taking more touches now, not necessarily playing point guard, but kind of handling the ball as the de facto point guard, even with guys like Brandon Williams and Ryan Nembhard on the floor. So, yeah, bye, D'Angelo Russell. Done with him. But that's going to do it for this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. Good luck on your next week, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks.